Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a Books Beside My Bed video for you where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. And if my voice keeps going in and out, I have no idea why because I woke up this morning and I was perfectly fine. We're just going to see how long it lasts. I have a bunch of books to talk about today, so we're going to jump straight into them. The first one being a review title that I received from the author, and that is a middle fiction book called Queen of Dogs by Jo Weatherstone. This is the story of Maddie, who lives with her family, and she's just very different from her family. They don't really understand her. They're all very sporting and ambitious and they live life, you know, in the fast lane essentially, and Maddie just wants to live her life with her dog. And when her dog goes missing, she is absolutely distraught and distressed, as you would be. And so she goes out to see if she can try and find her dog, and then along the way ends up with the ability to talk to dogs. And there's a whole lot of dogs in the neighborhood who she's been really nice to and kind to over the years, and they all join in and they try and help Maddie to find her missing dog, and they sort of uncover a few strange happenings in the neighborhood with some of the local businesses involving dogs, and it really brings Maddie and particularly her siblings closer together. It also forces her family to see Maddie for who she is as opposed to who they want her to be, which is a really nice thing. This is really fun. I mean, if you have a middle fiction reader who absolutely adores dogs, this is the perfect one for you, because who hasn't ever dreamed of being able to communicate with their dog? I mean, dogs are great, and I bet they would have either the funniest things to say or the most insightful things to say. Another middle fiction book that I read, well, this was actually a reread for me, but it's been so long since I read it, is The Wild Robot Escapes by Peter Brown. This is the second book in the Wild Robot series, and at the end of the first book, Roz had been taken by some other robots back to her creators because she was seen as defective, and so she has managed to pass all of their tests and has been given a new body. It's fixed up, but she still has her mind intact, and she has been sent off now as the robot to a farmer and his children, and so she becomes the best possible farmer because that's her purpose, but all the time she's trying to figure out how she can escape and get back to her son Brightbill and the island where they all lived. Eventually the children figure out Roz's secret and they start helping her as well, and then it is how she escapes both from the farm and then gets all the way back to the island, and we learn a little bit more about the world, a little bit more about the creation of the robots, and it means that I can finally read the third book in the series, so I'm very excited. I also reread The Spellshop by Sarah Beth Durst. I had it as an audio out on Libby, so I was literally just listening to it any chance I got, and it was great to go back to it. So this is a reread. I talked about it fairly recently, so I'm not going to go back into it aside from the fact that it's a cozy fantasy with a really lovely romance threaded through it, and just honestly, I think this is my kind of fantasy. I think this is where I sit happily, so I was thrilled to go back to it. Had a lot of rereads this week, unsurprisingly. I also reread Love Flushed by Evie Mitchell. This was the book that I was going to annotate, so I have, you know, annotated it with page flags. And this is the second book in the All Access series. It follows Annie, who has Crohn's disease, and she also owns her own toilet paper business. And she is in the market for a new paper supplier because her current one is screwing her over. In walks her high school ex, Lincoln. And Link and his brother have taken over their father's paper mill in town, and they have realized that he has basically run it into the ground, and they are desperate for new clients and desperate for new deals. And so Link makes a proposal to Annie, and she is initially reluctant at first because Link broke her heart, and it is really them reconciling and talking through exactly what happened. And Link and his brother have a truly awful family. Eventually they come to an agreement and they become both business partners but also rekindle their relationship. So it is really fun, really enjoyable, and like Evie Mitchell is she's just an enjoyable time to read her books. I just enjoy all of them. So it was nice to revisit this one because Darn It All is finally on the horizon, and I'm so excited to read that one. Also, I should say both the FMC and the MMC in all of Evie's books, but particularly in this series, they have excellent friendship groups. There is overlap between their groups, but there is an awesome female friendship group. There is also a really awesome male friendship group in here, which to have both of those in a book is fantastic. Then I read The Hive Queen by L.L. Frost. This is book 4 in the Demonic Messes and Other Annoyances series. It is one of the series that I'm trying to read this year. This series is interesting because while each book has its own plot line, the actual overall plot is kind of important. So talking about much of what's going on in this book is kind of spoilery, but this is a polyamorous paranormal romance series, and all of the characters in the relationship have a very complicated, long-standing history. They are all paranormal creatures with extended lifespans, and so they have known each other constantly. And in this current time, one of the characters basically had no memory of his past. He has since reclaimed that memory, but also another member of the group was killed at the end of the book. He sacrificed himself for someone else. And so everyone in the group is reeling from that and dealing with it in their own way, for better or worse. And the book plot line is that there is a series of murders going on, men are being killed, and it turns out that the creature responsible is kind of like a queen bee kind of monster who was originally captured by the member of their group that was killed at the end of the previous book. So they're trying to work out the best way of managing this creature because no one else seems to have the answers. And meanwhile, we find out exactly what has happened with the character that has sacrificed himself. So this series and this book in particular will probably not be for everyone, but I had a wonderful time reading it because I quite enjoy these characters and their sense of humor and just the way that everything is playing out, because their life is messy. It's incredibly messy, and I quite enjoy a bit of mess in a paranormal romance. Then I read Forgotten Romance by Saxon James. This is the illustrated hardcover edition, which arrived during the week, so I read it as soon as it turned up, because of course I did. And this is the 6th and final book in the Divorced Men's Club series, which follows a group of friends who have all been divorced or live in the same town and have been adopted by this friendship group. And this is a second chance romance between Davy and Mac, who were married and then got divorced because Davy's work really took over his life. And I think this book has some really interesting points about people who are workaholics, but why they work, and also the people who they almost unintentionally leave behind. And I think the thing that's really, really interesting about this is Davy and Mac never stopped loving one another, but Mac couldn't handle the fact that Davy might only spend a couple of days a month with them while he was raising their 2 children. And so eventually he got to the point where he just said, I think we need to separate, because I can't do this. I can't have you here for a couple of days and then have you leave again, because it's hard for me, it's hard for the kids, and you obviously don't want to leave us, but you also can't say no to your work. I don't think it necessarily says one way or the other that either man is right in their thinking and the way that they do it, because Davy does choose his job initially, but they also agree to still share the same house so that when Davy is in town, he is there with the kids. So they're divorced, but they're also not separated. And it gets to the point where Davy is finally back in town for an extended period of time. And Mac has decided, right, I'm going to get him back. We're going to try this, because our feelings haven't changed. And all of his friends tell him, you can't change him. You can't make him choose between you or his job, because he did that before and he chose the job. So you're going to be heartbroken again. And their friendship group is their friendship group. It's complicated and it's messy. But I think along the way, Mac learns that no, he can't do that. He can't make Davy choose. But also Davy recognizes that even though he loves his job and he loves the work that he does, it actually takes a lot out of him. And at the end of the day, he was promised a certain amount of leave so he could spend time with his family, and then work calls him back. And that, for him, that sort of really puts into perspective the fact that this company, who he has worked for years, really doesn't give a shit at the end of the day. If they have a client that comes in and they need him to work on it, they're going to cancel his leave. That's the catalyst for him, which is good, because in that way it's him making a decision about what he wants to do moving forward, as opposed to just doing it for his partner. And I don't think I'm explaining that really well, but I just like the dynamic and the things that it explored, and the complications of a relationship like this. That's also even more complicated because there are kids involved, and the kids are just gorgeous and precious. And also the Divorced Men's Club friendship group is always hilarious and outlandish and just highly enjoyable to read about. I'm sad that this series is done, but all of these characters will pop up in other Saxon James series, because all of her books and series seem to be interconnected. I should say there are also 2 or 3 illustrations in the book as well. So it's not just an illustrated hardcover, it's also an illustrated book. I also read Wild Temptation by Hope Ford. This was the oldest book on my KU TBR that I had to read this month. And this one is about Madeline and Asher, and it is a workplace romance. It is Grumpy Sunshine. The MMC is the owner of a peach farm, and the FMC is a farmer she studied agriculture and is a farmer, and she's come to work on the property. And this is very much an insta-lust kind of relationship situation, because he's grumpy, he doesn't want her there. He sees her and judges her straight away, and then 2 days later they're sleeping together. So it's that kind of romance. It did have anaphylaxis representation in here. The FMC is allergic to bees, and there is an anaphylactic episode on page, which I actually don't think I've seen that many of. So that was good to see that on page. And yeah, it's really a grumpy sunshine romance, but everything does move a little bit quickly, so just be aware of that. And then the last book that I reread this week was Sanctuary by Ilona Andrews, because I have the live show today as I'm filming, so I've got to finish wrapping this up so I can go and jump on the live stream. I just wanted to make sure that I had reread it and listened to it, because the book arrived and I hadn't read the physical copy, and I wanted to do my annotations and also, again, just immersive read it with the audio because pronunciation. This is the first book in the Roman Chronicles. I've read it 5 times in the last 3 weeks, so I've talked about this plenty. And that is everything that I've read in the last week. In the comments, I'd love to know if you've read any of these books or if you're planning on picking any of them up. Otherwise, feel free to share something that you have read and loved throughout the week. Or what kind of emoji could you leave me? I don't know. Let's see. Well, I think the obvious one, since I read Love Flushed, is to leave me the toilet paper emoji. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.